At the end of this month, I'm going to be turning 30. And so I thought, what better time than now than to look back on my past decade of my 20s and to share with you some of the lessons I've learned along the way. I'm going to be splitting this into 3 acts, if you will. Early game, mid game, and late game 20s. Feel free to judge my life as I start to tell you about all the twists and turns I've made. Maybe you're going to want to take some notes, or maybe you're going to want to compare notes if you yourself have already crossed that 3-0 threshold. So let's start with Act 1, my early 20s. Back in my early 20s, I was always hungry and broke. My go-to meal was a 59-cent can of tuna after a long day's work over at the Best Buy as a Geek Squad agent. But in my early 20s is where I learned one of my most important lessons, which is how to be independent. I learned to cook for myself, to clean for myself, because I was 1,000 miles away from any single family member as I was attending college. It forced me to understand what it really means to be alone and to fend for myself, and it made me feel that much more grateful to have people cooking me home-cooked meals or to be with my friends and family. Maybe you don't have to move to a completely different state to get the same effect, but what you can do is schedule a couple days out of the month where you are really on your own and you don't have the ability to lean on your family and friends. Maybe you've got to fend for yourself, cook a meal for yourself. And if you haven't moved out of the house just yet, maybe tell your family, hey, let's try me cooking dinner for the next week and see how that goes. So without much money and fending for myself, I was pretty limited to a few activities, which were going to work, playing lots of video games, and going to the gym. And this is where I learned my other lesson of my early 20s, which is to try to build a good exercise habit early. Because as you get older, more responsibilities are just going to start piling up. And it's going to be that much harder to solidify working out as a habit, something that you do subconsciously. Nowadays, if I don't get a workout in, something feels off about my day, and I'm pretty proud that I built that habit earlier on. Now, I'm not saying you can't start this habit when you're later on in life. I'm just saying it's that much more easy if you start early. There's just something about being able to put yourself through a strenuous, physically challenging workout that makes you come out of the other side saying, you know what? If I could do that, I'm pretty sure I could do anything. And that anything for me was starting a business in Act 2, my mid-20s. In my middle 20s, I began my first startup company, but the lesson here isn't for you to go out and start your own business. You see, this startup was actually a youth program for video gamers, helping them balance video games with going out into the real world and touching grass. I was a really big gamer growing up, and it's actually something that I kept hidden from a lot of my good friends, from a lot of the people that I was interested in, because I was ashamed that I loved playing these games. Which brings me to my next lesson, and that is to be open about your passions. When I stopped hiding who I was and what I was passionate about, it gave me more confidence, and I think people could tell. They could see it on my face. I'm just gonna say it. Being more openly passionate about something made me more attractive. And that's going to help you out in more ways than one, even in the dating scene. Don't be afraid of talking about what excites you. Be more open about that, and people will really notice a difference in the way you carry yourself. In my mid-20s, I really solidified the values that I wanted to carry as an adult. And because of that, I thought I knew where my life was headed and where it was going. That is until the pandemic struck and brought my entire service-based after-school startup crumbling down. And this is where I learned another lesson in my mid-20s, which is failure is an option. It's just that those who learn from failure and are able to bounce back quickly are the ones who gain success. Act 3, my late game, my late 20s. After my business collapsed, I packed everything up and moved all the way back home, closer to my family in the Washington, D.C. area. Like many of you, COVID was such a weird time, and I personally had to start from square one. I lost my job, I lost my business, and so I started scrambling, finding any job that I could take. And at one point, I was an Amazon package delivery driver. And then I found, luckily, a remote job coaching for Cloud9's Training Grounds program. That time was really stressful for me, but what kept me together is having a supportive group of friends and family. which is my first lesson of my late game 20s. Find a supportive group of people that you can rely on and be open with. These people made me feel loved and capable. So if you can, please schedule some time on the calendar so that you can bond and spend some quality time with these people. And by keeping these relationships strong, it actually benefited me in a whole nother way, which is increasing my network. So much to the point that somebody was able to offer me a fully paid salary job at a big tech company, and that changed my life financially. Which brings me to my final tip in this video, and it's actually something that I had been working towards in my entire 20s, but really didn't master until I was about 28, which is how to have a good budget. You see, I'd been using tools like Mint.com since I was 21, but it wasn't until I had a salary and was 28 until I really mastered what it takes to have a good budget. And a good budget in my eyes is really making sure that you're saving, making sure that you're writing down all of your expenses that you need to have for the month, and then even writing down a small little budget for your discretionary income, essentially your fun money. Because when you have fun money and you've got your necessities, you'll know exactly how much you can spend, and you'll get excited to spend that little chunk of change you set aside just to be able to enjoy life. And that's it. Those are a few of the lessons I've learned in my 20s. I cannot wait for my 30s. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked longer form content, and there will be more. So stick around, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.